My name is Preston Smith, and I am a state senator from Rome. I grew up in Cobb County, was born and raised there, then went out to school in Texas for my undergraduate and back to the University of Georgia for law school, and I've been practicing law in Rome following law school. I'm a seventh generation Georgian. I love the state. I've learned so much about it during my travels, and just really believe we live in the greatest state in the country. And we have a lot to be proud of from the founding of our state and the uniqueness of how Georgia was originally founded until today. And I really think our brightest days are ahead of us if we can take things back under control and begin to fix some of the problems that are really, really spinning in the wrong direction. So there's a lot of reason for hope, but we've got to be serious about who we elect and elect people that are conservative and willing to fight for us. And I'm a conservative, and I don't apologize for that. And I hope that you are, and you'll join me. If you're not a conservative, you probably won't like me. And by conservative, I'll tell you that I believe in limited government. I think that really problems are not solved best by government. They're solved best by individuals and small businesses who are working to create jobs and fix things. And oftentimes the problems that we have are when government interjects itself into our business and our lives, gets on our back and in our way. And it's not until we move government aside that really the path to a solution becomes clear. I believe in low taxes and personal responsibility, individual liberty, and a strong defense. Things that I thought and still believe are the core conservative principles of the Republican Party. And I think the Republican Party governs best is when it's really true to those original conservative principles and ideals. So that's what I pledged to do when I got elected from Rome in 2002. And I came down to the legislature to put those conservative principles into place. I became the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I helped, joining with Senator Heath and other good conservatives that are down there, to write pro-life laws in Georgia, because I'm pro-life, and I believe that life begins at conception. And I think one of the fundamental duties of government is to protect the sanctity of innocent life. And I found out, for example, when I got down to the legislature, that a young lady could not get an aspirin from the school nurse without getting permission from her parents. But they could refer her to an abortion clinic for a surgical procedure without her parents knowing. And I just thought that didn't make sense. It didn't make common sense. It didn't make sense at all. There was an informed consent law in Georgia that said on any medical procedure that you go get, the doctor has to tell you the risk of the procedure, the alternatives to it, and so forth, except abortion. They don't have to tell you that for abortion. So we changed those laws. We joining with a number of conservatives down there, like I said, including Bill Heath, who's very strong pro-life conservative, we wrote new laws to do just exactly that and to expand the defense of life. I believe in the Second Amendment. I'm a lifetime NRA member, and I don't think it's just about hunting or target shooting or having a collection. I also think that having a Second Amendment guarantees that government always ultimately stays in check. I'm not calling for an armed revolution, but I think always defending the right of citizens to keep and bear arms is an ultimate last line of defense against a government that gets out of control and becomes a tyranny. And that's why we have a freedom-loving people that are allowed to keep and bear arms. And so when we got down to the General Assembly, we found out that although you were allowed to have a gun in Georgia, even if you were a licensed permit holder, you didn't know where you could carry it. Law enforcement didn't know where to enforce it. Judges didn't know how to handle cases where you were charged with carrying it in the wrong place. And gun owners didn't know where you could and couldn't take it. And so we fixed that. The reason was there was a law that was said you can't take your gun to a public gathering, but there was no definition of what public gathering meant. Did that mean you could have one on in McDonald's or you could have one on outside? No one knew. And so this year we went through and defined what that meant to bring clarity to the law and expand the rights of gun owners. I was shocked to find out how bad our illegal immigration problem is in Georgia. And let me tell you, it is one of the biggest problems we face today, and Washington is totally and completely ignoring it, and they will continue to ignore it unless and until there's a catastrophic tragedy. It's really, really gone beyond common sense. On the northern border with Canada, there are open roads back and forth across the border, and there are boxes with cards, and it's an honor system. And you're asked if you cross the border there just to stop and fill out a card and put it in the box to tell immigration or the authorities when you're coming and going. Well, honor systems don't work with dishonorable people. In fact, they interviewed the sheriff up there who crosses the line every day, and they said, "Do you even fill out the card?" He says, "Well, no, I go across too often to do that." Well, you've got one group of people that don't fill it out because they go across too often. One group doesn't fill it out because they're not here for honorable purposes. Who fills it out? And they're not the ones we're worried about. On the southern border, and this is beyond comprehension to me, it's incredible that we're ignoring this. There are parks, federal parks on the southern border, where you are advised not to go into the park because so much of it is under the control of Mexican drug cartels. Are you kidding me? These are United States citizens entering a federal park, United States-owned facility, and they are cautioned against using the park that their tax dollars pay for because so much of it is under the control of foreign nationals who are lawbreakers and who have taken over some of these areas. I mean, it's incredible, and I think that we've got to be serious about it, and I think the states are going to begin to have to solve this problem because the federal government's just simply not going to do it. And when you get down to it, these are people that are lawbreakers, and I'm sorry if that offends you, but we've done this politically correct tap dance for so long we're afraid to call it what it is. Well, they're in school, or they'll be productive later on in life. Listen, they're lawbreakers. The law says there's a pathway to citizenship, and you need to follow that pathway. And what we're doing is we're incentivizing people to come here and to use taxpayer-funded services for education, public safety, and health care, and it's all at the expense of taxpayers that are funding it. And so I think we've got to be serious about this problem. We've got to begin solving it. Another issue, and I'll tie this in, the reason why I think this is important is because the Attorney General is the one state officer that actually interfaces with the federal government on these issues. The health care bill is another very good example. The Obama health care legislation is a travesty on the American public, and for two reasons. Number one, Congress has mandated that you buy a service. There is nothing in Article 1 of the Constitution, nothing in Article 1 of the Constitution that authorizes the United States Congress to mandate that you buy any good or service, including federal health care. They do not have the authority to do it. And so we need to challenge that in the court systems and make them defend by what authority do you require people to buy anything, good or service, particularly this health care bill. Show us in the Constitution where you have that authority. And if you don't buy the federal health insurance, they issue you a tax or penalty, a fee. Well, in Article 1, Section 9, it specifically says you're not authorized to issue a direct tax, or a capitation it's called. So they don't, and the Founding Fathers specifically said you're not allowed to do this. And so I think you challenge those two things, and the reason is this is the first time in the history of our country where Congress has issued a tax that is not based upon something that you earn, something that you own, or something that you consume. This is a tax based on the fact that you exist. And if you allow Congress to tax you based on the fact that you exist, there are no barriers whatsoever to their control. They will control what you do, when you do it, where you do it, and they'll tax you if you don't. And I don't think that is a legitimate function of the federal government. And the only thing we can do now is to stand up as states and put this back in the courts and say there is a definition of the federal government. It is not unlimited power. And there is a right and a role of a state government to protect its own citizens. And we've got to establish what that balance is. And we're way out of kilter.